What is Microsoft Bookings, and is it the right tool for you? Bookings is an application that lets you set up availability and then let people book time with you. This can be very useful because it allows you to control when people can have time with you versus letting people come in and just plop any old thing on your calendar and disrupt your day. Now, there's two flavors of bookings. You can have a personal bookings calendar or a shared calendar. In today's video, we're going to talk about the shared version of bookings, and we'll talk about the personal version of bookings in another video. To find the Bookings homepage, go to your Microsoft 365 home, select Apps, go to All Apps on the right-hand side of the screen, and then you should find Bookings towards the top of the list. The first time you open the Bookings app, you will see this page that allows you to choose what type of booking page to start with. The personal booking page allows you to share your own availability. The shared is designed to manage the availability of a group of people. It is important to know that when you create a shared bookings page, only the Microsoft 365 administrator can delete it. You cannot create a test bookings page and then delete it by yourself. To get started with our shared bookings page, click on Create Booking Page. A floating dialog box will appear, and the only mandatory entry we have at this moment is to give our bookings page a name. Be careful what you choose because the name will be used to create an email address, and it will be included in the URL for the booking page. For today's example, we're going to pretend that we are setting up a bookings page for a Microsoft 365 coaching service. If you want to, you can add a logo. You can click the drop down to choose your business type, and you can set your business hours. Now, the default is Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. You don't have to set this up now because, as you will see later in the video, there is another place where you can modify these settings. We will click on Next to continue with the Setup Wizard. This is the step where you can invite other people to be part of this bookings page. Now, notice that it's automatically made me the administrator because I'm the one who's creating the page. I can search for people within the organization and add them here. But again, you can also do this later. What I'd like to point out is that the default permission is team member. You can click the drop down next to this role and you can select one of these additional options. We're going to click Next to see the option to set up a service for this booking calendar. The service is the type of appointment that you will let people create from the bookings calendar. The default is a 30-minute meeting during your normal business hours. If you click on the word Change, you will see some options to customize the service duration as well as the days of the week and the times that are available. Now, we're going to leave this alone because we're going to customize all of this from within the bookings calendar after it is set up. On the last page of the Setup Wizard, you can choose who can book an appointment. There are three choices here. No self-service, which means that people can only schedule appointments from the Bookings app. You can say people in your organization can book with an internal self-service page. And the third option is anyone, meaning anyone who gets the link on the internet, whether they're part of your company or outside of your company, can book an appointment using a self-service page. For today's demonstration, I'm going to leave the default and click Create. Now, Microsoft is going to take all of the information from the wizard and set up your bookings page. When the page is set up, you're going to receive an email letting you know it's been set up, but you will also see a notification here in the Bookings app that will give you a link to the page that you just created and gives you a button so that you can share the page with others. I am going to close the floating dialog box so that we can look at all of the ways that we can customize our bookings calendar. We are in the administrative section of the bookings page. On the left, you see a navigation menu. In the main part of the page, you are going to see information related to whatever you chose in the navigation menu on the left. By default, we are on the calendar view, and it shows the information by day and by staff. Now, you can click on the drop-down menu to select different options such as work week, week, or month. I would like to draw your attention to the menu on the left-hand side of the screen, and we're going to select Booking Page. This lets you configure settings for your page. At the top, you can change who can see the page. We left the default of available to people in our organization, but you can change your mind and choose one of the other options. This is also where you will go if you need to get a copy of the URL, send the URL in an email, or get an embed code to use on a web page. Now we're going to walk through the options to manage your booking page. Under Business Page Access Control, you can choose to disable search engine indexing. When you are using bookings for internal use only, you may want to check this to prevent people from outside of your organization from finding the bookings page via Google, Bing, or any other search engine. You can also choose to require a one-time password when creating a booking. This is a useful security feature to prevent bot-type behavior. The next option is Customer Data Usage Consent. This will let you put in a message about how you will use the customer's data and add a consent box that the person must check before booking an appointment. While the Bookings app does not require this to be used, I know some use it to comply with local laws and regulations. If you're using this for internal stakeholders only, the information is usually coming from company data, so many organizations leave this deselected. Choose whichever option applies to you. The default scheduling policy is something that you want to spend some time on and give it some thought. The option you choose in this section can automatically be applied to every service that you will create. Now, the first thing we're going to look at is the time increment. By default, it was set to 30 minutes, but if you click the drop-down, you can choose from any of these things on the list, or you can choose a custom setting. Then you can choose the lead time for appointments and cancellations. Do you want to allow people to make last-minute appointments, or do you need some lead time to prepare for the meeting? In my example, as a M365 coach, I need some time to prepare for the next day's calls, so I'm going to leave this at 24 hours. Maximum lead time determines how far out a person can make an appointment. The default is 1 year, but in my case, I like to narrow it down to 91 days. Under the email notification section, notice that the business is going to be notified whenever a booking is created or changed. But then you can ask yourself, do you want to send a meeting invite out to the customer automatically? Or do you want to review the details of the booking and then send them the invite with additional details? The staff control option was a hot topic where I used to work because this setting allows you to decide whether or not the customer can choose to work with a specific person. Sometimes it may make sense for the customer to choose who they're working with. In other cases, you might have managers who need to balance the workload of their team members. When looking at the availability section, I suggest that you think about the overall workload for your team when setting this up. Under general availability, the default is bookable when the staff are free. So it's looking at their Outlook calendar to determine when they're free, and then it'll fill in any blank spaces in their calendar. The other most common option is custom hours, and this is where you can decide the exact times that you are available for appointments. As an example, Wednesdays are a meeting-free day, so I can make that not bookable. And then I can choose custom hours for each day of the week. Your business may support people outside of traditional 9 to 5 business hours. So let's say you take appointments up until 8 o'clock at night, but you don't start taking appointments until 10 o'clock in the morning. And while we're at it, let's pretend that our business offers appointments on the weekend. So we can click on the plus sign towards the right-hand side of the screen and make those days bookable. Let's close this section and then look at the few options that we have to customize our page. The options you have here are minimal. You can choose from 2 page templates, the new one that doesn't have a banner or the classic one that does have a banner. And then you can choose different color themes. Now, there's a few here that you can choose from, but you can also click on Set Custom Color for your booking page and then enter the hex codes if you know them. The last option is to decide whether or not you want to display a logo on your page. Now, this just turns the logo on or off. You will add the actual logo somewhere else. The last option we have is to look at region and time zone settings. This is where you can choose the default language and time zone. The current time zone is set to Coordinated Universal Time, but I'm in the East Coast, so I'm going to scroll through the options and then select that. Now, for this last checkbox, it lets you decide whether or not you want the self-service page to detect the person's local time zone and then show the availability in their time zone. You can change this to show only in the business time zone, but I find letting the app show visitors options in their own time zone reduces mistakes, and thus I end up with fewer cancellations and missed appointments. Now let's look at the Customers tab. This is where you will see the names of people who have signed up for an appointment. Right now it is blank because the page is new and no one has used it yet. But one of the options you have is to go towards the center of the page and click Add New Customer. A blank customer form will open in the center of the screen. Here you will add your customer information such as name, email address, contact information, and company information. There are additional choices such as under name, you can add a suffix. Click any of the blue hyperlinks to see the additional options that are available. Next, we're going to take a look at the staff option. This is where you will see who is currently assigned to the booking page. You can change roles, add or remove employees, and see some details about your specific team members. Let's look at an example. Right now, I'm the only administrator, and it's a good idea to have 2 for every team. So I'm going to click on the little pencil icon next to Adele's name, and I'm going to change her team member role to become an administrator. Click on the drop-down next to the description for team member, and here you will see descriptions for the other roles. This is letting us know that administrators can edit all settings, add and remove staff, and create, edit, and delete bookings. I'm going to select this option, and now let's take a quick look at some additional things that you can change while you're editing a staff member. You can change their availability and choose whether or not the events on their office calendar will affect their availability within bookings. You can also update the business hours for a specific person. So even though the business hours are available from 9 to 5, maybe Adele has different times in which she is available. If you've made any changes, click Save Changes. Let's pretend a new person has joined our staff. If you go to the top of the screen and click Add New Staff, you can search for that person's name from the global address list. You can also type in an email for somebody outside of your organization, but it's important to know that anybody that's from outside the organization can only be a guest on your booking calendar. So now that we have our staff members set up, now we need to decide what kind of services that we're going to offer. Because we didn't create a service during the setup, we're seeing the default 30-minute meeting. We can either edit this meeting or we can add a new service. We're just going to go ahead and edit the existing service. Now at the top, I'm going to give it a name that's descriptive of the service, And then I'm going to put in a basic description so that people know what they're signing up for. If this is an in-person service, you'll want to add a location. Otherwise, you can just leave the toggle turned on for Add Online Meeting. Next, you can set the duration of the service. This can either pull from the default scheduling policy or it can be entirely different. So in this case, I have decided that a Teams coaching call should take 1 hour. Another thing that you can do is build in some buffer time. Now, this is incredibly useful when you have a lot of back-to-back meetings. I personally like to add 5 minutes after each of my meetings. The next thing you can do is set a price. If you're working with people from within your organization, it's most likely going to be set to free. But if you charge for your services, you can choose from any of the options such as fixed priced, hourly, price varies, etc. The one thing I do need to point out here is that Bookings is not integrated with any payment services, and for that reason, for people who are trying to collect money in advance over the internet versus in person when the service is provided, Bookings is not necessarily ideal. On this page, you can also do a couple other things like set a note that only you and your staff can see. You can change the maximum number of attendees, and you can let the customers manage their appointment when it's booked by you or your staff on their behalf. There's no wrong or right about letting the customer manage their appointment, though I personally do let people manage their appointments so that if they need to cancel, they don't have to wait to send me an email and have me respond. In this floating dialog box, we have additional menu choices. The next one is availability options. This is where we can set up our scheduling policies such as time increments, minimum and maximum lead time, as well as the general availability. Now, this may seem familiar to you from when we did this earlier for the default policy. However, this can be different than the default policy if you need it to be. Next, we need to assign staff to the services, otherwise you won't be able to make any bookings. Under Assign Staff to the Service, you have two choices. You can assign any of your staff to the selected appointment, and this means that only one person needs to be available. If you choose Assign all of your selected staff for an appointment, it means that everyone must be available at the designated time. In this example, only one person needs to be available for a Teams coaching appointment. In the Selected Staff section, I can decide which of the 4 people assigned to this booking page will be available for this type of appointment. The next menu item is Custom Fields. In the Customer Information section, these are the pieces of information that the customers will see when they fill out the form to request a booking appointment. Customer email is the only required option at this time. However, you can make any or all of these questions required. Under the Custom Field section, you can add a text question or a drop-down question. So in this example, I want people to provide me with a little bit of information about what they would like to discuss during our collaboration call. Let's click on Save Changes, and now the question is available to add to the form. So I will click on the bubble for Select, and then I can decide whether it is a required question or not. In this case, I'm going to turn the toggle button on. The last menu item in the Edit Services dialog box is Notifications. At the very top, you see the option for text message notifications. It's important to realize that you must have a Teams Premium license in order to use this feature. If you don't know whether or not you have Premium, please contact your global administrator. The rest of the email notifications are available with a standard bookings license. Now you can choose if you want to send an email confirmation when the booking is made, and this can notify the business as well as the person who has made the appointment. This option was also available under the Bookings page menu item, but the difference here is you can add some additional information that you would send to the customer with the email that goes out. You have the option to set up a reminder for the appointment. In this example, I send one out one day before and let people know that if they need to cancel, please give me a heads up. You also have the option to send a follow-up email after the appointment is over. It can be anywhere from 15 minutes after the appointment all the way to a couple weeks later. We've made a lot of updates, so don't forget to save your changes. The next menu item for the bookings page is business information. This is where you can add some basic details about your business, such as its name, address, phone number, and URL. Under the business type option, I typically leave it as other because there's only these few options to choose from. In the privacy policy and terms and conditions section, there are two boxes where you can put the applicable URLs. If you're only serving internal stakeholders, it's likely that you won't need to include this information. But if you're helping external customers, you may be required to fill this in based on where you live. If you have a logo that you would like to associate with your business, it can be added under the business information section. In the business hours section, you can have your open and close time that is separate from the times that are used for the services. If you've made any changes, don't forget to save them at the top of the page. Now we've gone over all of the basic information that you need to know to set up your first shared bookings calendar and to decide if this is the right tool for you. In the next video, I will discuss a personal bookings calendar so that you can decide if that option is more applicable to your work style.